Just finished my porridge for breakfast, and now I suppose you'll all be wanting a story, won't you? Well, actually, no, you probably won't, but you're going to get one anyway, whether you like it or not. Because you might not think of this as a British folk tale, but it really is. And it's not just a fairy tale that people make up, you see. This is the oldest version of this story comes from somewhere up north in England. And it's to do with porridge, it's to do with home, and you might know it as Goldilocks and the Three Bears, but our version in Tales of Britain is The Three Bears. And as I say, you may think that you know this story. I think Roald Dahl also started a version with similar words. You know, the story about there's the three bears and the unwelcome visitor, and I never really understood Goldilocks. What was the point of Goldilocks? Were we supposed to like her? She was a burglar. She broke into people's houses and stole things. It didn't make any sense. But you see, that naughty little girl called Goldilocks was entirely made up. This is a true story, and Goldilocks was invented and chucked in the story. This, what I'm going to tell you now, this is the real story of what happened to those poor three bears many centuries ago, when wild bears were still to be found in the forests of Britain. And in this case, the three bears' wonderful home and hearth was far up in northern Scotland. Now, these three bears lived very happily together up in their own broch, which was a sort of a dry stone castle, up on a little hill in a clearing of a huge luscious forest which stretched for hundreds of miles around. There was one big bear and one little bear, and a third who was neither big nor little, but just the size that they were. These three bears were wild, of course, but very civilized for all that. Every morning they would arise from their cosy little beds, bid each other a very, very good morning, and then pad down to the kitchen to enjoy a piping hot bowl of porridge together to start the day. One day, however, all three bears found that their porridge was just too hot. "I have had a momentous idea," announced the middle bear. "Oh, good, I do love it when you have your ideas," replied the big bear. "Go you on ahead." "It's a truly splendid day. Why don't we find the right page for a start and then take a stroll around the forest while our breakfast cools?" "I declare it to be the idea of the year," cried the little bear, often the decider of all decisions for the trio. The wee fluffballs set down their little spoon and said, "Let's go, chums." And the three bears trooped out into the morning sun with a tra-la-lee on their lips. They did not even pause to put the broch door on the latch. That's just the kind of trusting, idealistic, possibly naive young bears that they were. Because no matter how far away from the madding crowd you may be, there may well be a rotter somewhere in the vicinity. It was all well and lovely that the three bears wished no harm to anyone, but in the shadows of that forest lurked many a scamp, not to mention numerous scoundrels, cads, and even the odd miscreant. And that morning, a real miscreant stepped into the sunshine of the clearing and sniffed the air excitedly. Milky milk, and cinnamon, porridge. The loud sound of a tummy rumble filled the clearing where the three bears' broch stood. This fellow, you see, was one of the wily fox brethren. Forget about Goldilocks. This was Scrapefoot. This sly and unusually clever animal is known to some storytellers from Scotland to France as Reynard. But this one, it wasn't called Reynard. This particular fox's name was, as I say, Scrapefoot. And what a hungry fox he was! Scrapefoot tiptoed up to the broch door, the heavy porridge aroma drawing him in, and he spied through a chink in the door to Keiss the joint. "Abandoned, and a fair game, and I am game for that," he whispered to himself. That wasn't much of a whisper, but, the bears were very far off by this point. Anyway, Scrapefoot stealthily let himself into the bear's home. "Porridge! Porridge was the only thing on Scrapefoot's mind as he crept over to the kitchen's broad oak table. He scampered up onto the biggest chair, picked up a spoon, licked his drooling lips, and tucked in. But then he stopped and pulled a face. "This porridge," Scrapefoot said, "is far too lumpy." And so he shifted over to the next chair and sampled the contents of the next bowl. He pulled a worse face. "This porridge," he announced himself, "is far too runny." And one more time, the thief moved over onto the next chair and picked up the smallest spoon. One big gulp. "This porridge is just right," said Scrapefoot, and even though he was a fox, he wolfed down the whole lot. Then Scrapefoot felt like a nice sit down after his long prowl through the forest, and so he looked around and saw a huge chair. He scampered up onto it, but soon his bottom was hurting, and he pulled a face. "Oh, this chair is too hard," he said. And so he clambered up onto the next chair, which was covered in cushions and covers and antimacassars galore. He circled around and tried to get comfy, but his back hurt. He pulled yet another face. "This chair is too soft and squidgy," he said. But he had already seen the third chair. Well, this chair could have been made for him, he thought, with its nice velvet seat and armrests. "This chair," he said, "is just right," as he began squeezing his big foxy behind onto it. But then, crack! His bottom fell right through the bottom and he landed on his bottom. Scrapefoot dusted himself down, bottom included, and snarled at the chair, which was by now a complete write-off. "Silly, cheap chairs," he growled. He gave a deep yawn. You see, all this eating and sitting had tired Scrapefoot right out, and so he slunk upstairs to the bedroom. The first bed he tried was the largest, and it was basically just a huge log with a thin sheet over it. "This bed is too hard," said Scrapefoot after much fidgeting. So the thief pounced onto the next bed, which was so festooned with cushions and cozies it looked like a gigantic marshmallow. When Scrapefoot leapt onto it, the mattress sprung him right up to the ceiling and he hit his head. Poof! Well, he tried to cuddle up in the eiderdown, but it was just no good. "This bed is just too soft and squidgy and springy," he wailed. But of course, the little bear's bed felt like a dream come true. Said Scrapefoot. "This bed is just right." He yawned and was soon snoring away with a big dopey grin on his porridge-smeared muzzle. But the three bears could only have been gone less than 10 minutes when they all happily plodded through the front door without any worries weighing on them. Then the big bear saw a spoon sticking up out of his porridge bowl. "Someone's been eating my porridge," the big bear growled. The middle bear also found their porridge half splattered across the table. "Someone's been eating my porridge too." The little bear examined the last bowl and found it completely empty. "Someone's been eating my porridge," the wee fluffball squeaked, "and they've eaten it all up." And then the trio came across their disrupted sitting room area. "Someone's been sitting on my chair," grumbled the big bear. "Someone's been sitting on my chair too," added the middle bear, tutting. "The antimacassars are all over the place." The little bear gave an even bigger squeak when they saw the splintered remains of the last chair. "Someone's been sitting on my chair and they've broken it all up." The poor little bear didn't know whether to growl or cry, but the bears all cuddled and promised to mend everything, and the middle bear had one of their great ideas. "Today's really not worked out for us, has it?" they said. "Let's just go back to bed." And so all three bears trooped sullenly upstairs and saw that even their bedroom had been burgled. "Someone's been sleeping in my bed," the big bear fumed. "Someone's been sleeping in my bed," added the middle bear, "and bouncing up and down on it." And the little bear had padded over to their own bed and let out a jubilant little growl. "Ah! Ha ha ha! Someone's been sleeping in my bed, and he's still in it!" At this cry, Scrapefoot let out a colossal snore and became wide awake. But his wiliness was no use to him. He had no time to scarper before the big bear had grasped him by the tail and was holding him up in the air as he scrabbled for freedom. "Hi there, bear friends," Scrapefoot beamed desperately. "Oh, thank goodness you're here. I heard this sound and I thought, oh dear, there's a burglary in progress here. So I was trying to investigate as a good neighbourly fox, of course, and can it, Reynard?" the little bear snarled as they opened the window. "Okay, pals. Middle bear, you take his left paws. Big bear, you take his right. Let's give him a good old swing." And so the big bears began to swing the giddy, sickly Scrapefoot backwards and forwards, counting 1, 2, 3 as they did so, and the little bear took a big run up and booted the naughty fox right in his big fox rear end. Boof! "Yeah!" cried Scrapefoot as he sailed out of the broch's window and through the air, landing with a crash in a thistle patch. The 3 bears shook their paws at him through the window and promised each other to be a little bit more careful in the future. But it took more than a few thistles to keep a fox like Scrapefoot down. He pulled the worst of the prickles out of his bottom and was pleased to note that no bones were broken, and then he turned back to the broch, waggled his claws in front of his nose, and blew a great big raspberry back at the angry bears. "Thanks for the porridge, Teddies! Ha ha ha!" the cheery fox hooted, and pelted back into the darkness of the forest to scam his way through another day. The 3 bears made some more porridge, and made it the right temperature this time. It was dishlicious. Oh, and then they also went out and bought a brand new big padlock for their front door. The end. And if you go up to Keiss in the Highlands, you'll find the 3 bears broch, where a real native British wild bear tooth has been found. And if you keep a lookout, you might also see a very naughty fox with a big, painful bottom. Don't spend too long looking for it though, because you'll be there for ages. Anyway, I've got the washing up to do, and there's so much more to do today. So have a wonderful Folklore Thursday, and there'll be more stories to come. Keep safe.